I've been working on my personal endeavor, to make my own pizzas, but I just can't get the dough right. Like,
Oh yeah, I remember you used to really like making pizzas.
well, yeah, it's just it's always okay is the problem. Like I can eat it, but it's like, and this time it felt like really good. Like it was proper stretchy. It was elastic. It was stretching everywhere. Formed some really nice looking pizza pies. But then you put it in your mouth and it's just there's something off about it.
Maybe because it tastes like shit.
Oh, it is. I it's too I think it probably tastes undercooked actually, which is weird because it was like it shouldn't be because it was really thin crust and it cooked on the outside. I don't know.
Well, you know what, Michael? I'm sorry about that. I really am.
It's not crispy enough either. That's the thing.
That's a shame. Well, hopefully
Oh well.
your review filmed better than you make pizza. We're about to find out.
That can probably be a cold intro, even though I was eating pizza right. But
That'd be good. Eating in the cold intro. That would work. And the long, awkward pause. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out relatively recently at the cinema and see if they still hold up upon a second viewing. I am your host, Michael, and I'm joined, as always, by my other host, Luke.
Hi.
And today, we will be looking at 2016's Deadpool. And Luke, would you like to tell us a thing or two about that?
Yes, certainly, Michael. So Deadpool. It's a 2016, like you said, American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character of the same name. I think I've said that like 20 times over the past 2 months.
Yes.
Directed by Tim Miller. Stars Ryan Reynolds, Marina Baccarin, that's it, Ed Skrein, and a load of other people who aren't important. Was released February 12th, 2016, just before Valentine's Day. Obviously, this is a movie about love, so that does make sense.
Yep.
And do you want to have a crack at the old budget, Michael?
Yeah. I'm going to go for... See, I don't think they had that much faith in it. Also, I know that there were budgetary restrictions in one situation. I know there was, in fact, I'll just say it now, there were budgetary restrictions on the final fight scene. Because I remember hearing that at the end, of course, Deadpool, he forgets his weapons. And that's kind of like a joke. The reason why they wrote that joke in there is because they wanted to do a big shootout at the end. But they didn't have the budget for it. So I'm going to guess it was a limited budget of 120 million.
Wow, Michael. Wow. That is way off.
You know
Just...
what the weird thing is? I actually genuinely think it could go either way right now. That's the worst thing. Not only am I far off, but I don't even know confidently which direction I'm far off in.
Do you think if they had a significantly higher budget, they wouldn't be able to film that last fight scene?
Well, no, you're right.
That's the clue. So it's a lot less.
It's lower.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's less than half. It's 50 of your guess, 58 million.
I'm so used to kind of big budgets recently. Well, actually, I guess Daddy's Home wasn't a big budget, but
it was higher than this.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that as I said it. But yeah, okay. Well, the weird thing is, I was in the right direction. Like, I was thinking it would be low, but I was thinking it would be lower than other, Marvel films. Well, I know this isn't technically a Marvel film. Well, it is a Marvel film, but it's not a Marvel film. It's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah, one of those.
One of those. One of those.
And the box office.
Okay, so again, I have a bit of a basis behind this because I've mentioned them before. There is a podcast that talks about comic book films. And as I've said before, I'm not a massive fan of comic book films, but they're Australian, so I sometimes like to listen to them just for the ASMR. And they were talking about Deadpool, and they were talking about it before it came out. And they were talking about just after it was revealed it would get an R rating. And they were basically saying, do you think that with it getting an R rating, it will make very much money? And one of the things that they mentioned was they said, the highest grossing R-rated... Hey, do you know this, Luke, actually? Do you know what the highest grossing R-rated film of all time is?
No, tell me.
Well, actually, it's now Deadpool. But the highest grossing film of all time was Passion of the Christ.
Ah, well, there you go.
which made about, I think, 650 million.
We need to do a select and reflect on Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, we do actually. Passion of the Christ made about 650 million, and one of them in their Australian accent was like, "Do you think that this will make 650 million?" Because that's what Australian people sound like. And the other one said no, and they were so confident it wouldn't make 650 million. And of course, so basically, I know
They
it
were
made
right.
I know
much more than that.
Yes, yeah. I know it made more than 650 million. I feel like it made, I really want to say almost a billion, but not a billion. So I'm going to go for 950 million.
Again, quite a bit less, 783 million.
Okay, so all right.
Yeah, a sizable chunk above Passion of the Christ, but not
okay.
really near a billion. But yeah, basically talk about the box office returns. I remember before this movie came out, Deadpool, and there was a lot of talk about how well would an R-rated superhero movie do. There was a prediction I remember hearing that it wouldn't make over 100 million.
Well, yeah, everyone was wrong.
Yeah, like it just smashed
yeah.
expectations.
You know what? It was also a film that kind of made me decide to go to the cinema again, because I'm not a massive fan of going to the cinema. I'm less of a fan of going to the cinema than you are. But for Deadpool, I pretty much went just because I was like, well, its success is a phenomenon. And I think I'm right in saying I went before. So I went before it was a phenomenon.
Yeah, didn't you go on Valentine's Day?
I didn't actually go on Valentine's. You are close. I think I went the day after Valentine's Day.
Yeah, because I remember obviously you.
I was in a relationship with someone. Yes.
And Deadpool makes a point of pointing that out in the movie.
Yeah, which is something I actually want to talk about a bit later. But hey, for some reason, it naturally makes sense now for me to ask you the question, doesn't it?
That's just because you just started talking. But yeah.
Yeah, I know. But maybe we should just do it that way. Maybe we should just do it based on whether or not, just play it naturally. Luke, did you like this film?
Yeah, I did like this film. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, first of all, Luke, because I don't think I've answered a single question so far without having a little story behind it, I want to take everyone's minds back to when we just started this podcast, and we were kind of throwing around ideas, because of course the original idea, well, maybe not the original idea, the original idea we had for this podcast was just talking about films. Then we decided it was going to be about looking at films that had come out a while ago and seeing if they still hold up. And one of the films we brought up really early on, when we were talking about what films we're going to watch, was Deadpool. And this was before we'd come up with the topical discussion theme. So our first two films we did were Get Out and Dunkirk. And there was literally no reason we talked about those films apart from that they were films that had come out and we'd seen them.
Yeah, in the previous year. That's why I did them. And we're Oscar contenders. Obviously, we're doing Deadpool because of the release of Deadpool 2
exactly.
in a week's time.
Yeah, so we were pretending it will be today.
Oh, yeah,
when we upload it.
Yeah.
Unless I do it on Saturday again, because I'm a failure.
Yeah.
I won't this time because I've got time. Anyway, the point is, what I said when you brought Deadpool, I said, that would be a really good film to do. Because when Deadpool came out, it was an event. And one of the things that this podcast wants to look at is films that were an event when they came out, and saying, once the event is over, once it's no longer an event, does it still hold up? And the short answer is, when I was watching this film for the first 15 minutes, I was thinking, wow, this doesn't hold up when you're not in the cinema. Eventually, it won me over, and I thought, okay, this is still a good film. This is a very good film, I would say. However, I don't think it was as good as it was in cinema. But the short answer is, to keep it simple, as I love to do, I did think this was a very good film, but I do think this is also a really good example of a film where, we should point out that...
Yeah. We're doing a service here, Michael. That's what we're doing.
You're welcome, world.
We're selecting and reflecting. That's what we do.
Yes, and the good thing is we're being extra courteous by not being successful for our first 100 episodes, so that when we do become popular, people will have loads of episodes to binge watch.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
imagine how annoying it would have been for us to have become successful right off the bat, because then everyone would just be waiting for the next episode. But this way, when we get 1 million subscribers in 100 episodes time, people can be like, I can't wait for the next episode, but I've got all these episodes back before they were so successful.
Yeah. Like, if you just found us in 2023, you have fucking 300 episodes.
If you're our 9th subscriber in 2023.
Just about to watch Deadpool 6 in the cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we should get into the plot first. Just give an overview. So it's about...
Like you do.
Yeah. It's about a character known as Wade Wilson. played by Ryan Reynolds, who decides that when he gets cancer, he decides to go through this experimental treatment. And the doctor is a guy called Francis, or Ajax. His name is actually spelled like Ajax, but it's called Ajax, which is quite confusing. But yeah, so he's a bad guy, and Deadpool almost dies, but then he realizes that he's immortal, and tries to kill Ajax. Tries to capture him so we can find out if he can be cured, because he's ugly as fuck. And so then Ajax captures his girlfriend, takes her to this weird ship that looks like it's no longer in service anymore, and they have a massive fight, and Deadpool kills Ajax after working out that he can't be fixed, and his girlfriend does in fact take him back, and it's a happy ending.
Yes. I have a question, Luke, and you're not going to have the answer to it. Obviously, you say it's spelt like Ajax, but it's pronounced Ajax, and obviously Ajax is the Netherlands-based football team.
Mm-hmm.
They mention in the film the soap. I think they said he got the name Ajax off a soap, as in like a not like a soap, as in like a soap opera, Luke. So I'm wondering, is it possible? And again, I don't think you're going to know the answer to this, but is it possible that the soap is pronounced Ajax?
Yeah, it's possible.
It's possible. Let's just assume. See, the thing is, I don't know, because I feel like if he's just pronouncing it wrong, then that creates a horrible situation where a very posh-sounding British guy is in fact a moron, and I just think that would be a bit weird.
Yeah, that would be quite weird.
It would even be a nitpick.
It would be a nitpick. And speaking of nitpicks, time to get into them.
Yes. How many did you have, Luke?
I have one.
I have two. So you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. So it's the one. My one is just when they're in that taxi, driven by that guy Depinder, and somehow he can fit Colossus in that taxi, and that taxi can just still function like a normal taxi, drive along normally, even though Colossus's weight would be so large that it's unlikely that that taxi would be able to drive at all. So,
yeah, I was really thinking that they were going to do a Colossus gets out of the car goes up a couple of feet joke. Like, when fat people, they get in a car, it goes, and then they get out and it goes, that's it. And I don't think they did that joke.
But there was nothing, yeah.
Yeah. As for my nitpicks, I need to confess something, Luke. When I watched this film proper, I watched it with my sister, mostly because I felt like it. No, mostly because I wanted to watch something while I was eating my food, and it's just me and my sister in the house right now because my parents are in Cornwall for their wedding anniversary. No, it's not their wedding anniversary. I think it's their engagement anniversary.
Well, I'm really glad you're clarifying all this, man. It's really useful to our review.
The point being, Luke, that because I wasn't watching on my computer like a nerd like I usually do, I wasn't that much of an attentive note taker, and both of these nitpicks are actually things that my sister said after we watched the film. Oh, by the way, she did like it.
Right,
and she was really skeptical because she doesn't like X-Men, she doesn't like superhero films in general. She was like, but I didn't tell her that it wasn't your traditional superhero film. And because she lives under a rock, she didn't know that Deadpool wasn't your traditional superhero film. So she was very pleasantly surprised by it and enjoyed it. Anyway, these are our two things she brought up. Number one, apparently, so Deadpool, or Wade Wilson, he's walking around a strip club and he's got a hood over his head. And my sister, apparently, so this is interesting. I think you've never been to a strip club, Luke, right?
No, I haven't.
I've been to a strip club once for increasingly complicated reasons. My sister's been to strip clubs, I feel like something like half a dozen times in various contexts, and I can't even go into explaining why.
Contacts are working there?
No, she was a bouncer. But here's the thing, okay? She said that they wouldn't let you walk around in a strip club with a hoodie, and I'm inclined to agree with that. However, seeing as it's not technically my nitpick, I can just say, yeah. I just thought I'd give her a little bit of fame and say that, yeah, that probably seems like a legitimate nitpick. They would kick you out for walking around a strip club in a hoodie.
A really, really little bit of fame. Like,
yes.
The tiniest morsel of fame you can possibly get.
Yeah, well, and then the other one is that at the end it's revealed that Ajax can't fix Deadpool's face. However, the strong woman, who I don't know the name of, Angel, that's it. Her name is Angel, right?
Angel
or is
Dust.
that just his pet name?
Angel Dust. I'm looking at it now. characters
Okay.
names Angel does. Go on.
She says to him, "Are you going to fix his face?" In a scene where they're together, and this is kind of like obviously after the thing, and Ajax doesn't say no because I can't actually do that because that was just something I told him as a joke. He just doesn't say anything, and then the other thing is. Obviously, that means that when Deadpool's like, "Why aren't you going to fix my face?" he looks confused as if he's forgotten that's been said, and yet Angel Dust mentioned that to him not too long before that scene, so that was a bit weird.
Yeah, but he could just like be toying with Deadpool. I don't know.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, like I say, that one was also something that my sister. The weird thing is, I did pick up on a nitpick in my head, but then I forgot it because I couldn't be bothered to write it down.
Wow.
So I
Again,
technically had three. Just
you're
forgot one.
really taking this seriously, Michael. Great to see.
Ah.
Okay.
Anyway, plot.
Yes.
What do you have to say about the plot, Luke?
Well, that was a long pause. So the plot. Obviously, I think first we should comment on the structure.
Yes, that's what I had written down first.
Wow.
Genius.
So obviously, it's quite unusual how this story starts. Obviously, it's a origin story, and indeed most superhero movies don't do this anyway, even if it's not an origin story. But obviously, it starts off with some like fight happening on a road, and then it flashes back to when Wade Wilson first meets his girlfriend, and then back to the fight, and then back to Wade Wilson learning he's getting cancer and all that. And I think it's very good because what it does is like obviously normally origin stories are a bit boring, like it's just something that you have to get through to get to the end bit. Sometimes they can be interesting, particularly when the superhero is first learning about his new powers. I
Yes.
think that can be very interesting, but for the most part, the first half of superhero origin stories aren't that entertaining. So I liked how they split it up into different pieces. And then when the timeline is just chronological from then on, it's about an hour into the movie. So you got like the last like third of the movie to just focus on him killing Ajax. Oh, sorry, Ajax. And yeah, I think it was a good choice to split it up like that.
In this one, of course, you couldn't have had it be about Deadpool discovering his powers because his powers aren't actually that interesting. Because obviously in Spider-Man, he's got to learn to use his web stuff. But in this one, it's literally just he gets made immortal, and he's already established that he was a very skilled special forces fighter. So yeah, I also agree with you. I actually remember hearing someone say they didn't like the structure, just kind of like a casual review that I was perusing. And I thought, no, I really like the structure. And I agree with you. Yeah, it's good. It's a good way of keeping people kind of interested. And I don't know.
Entertained. It's like entertaining as well because if you get all the cancer bit, just continuously, then yeah, it could drag a bit. Could the film's sort of humorous tone could drop. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also when you think about it, you wouldn't even. I mean, maybe they could have played this as a joke when you think about it, but I don't think they should have done this. If you would have not or done it chronologically, you would think it was a love story, or kind of like a sad love story, right up until the bit when he gets chained down and taken to this, creepy hospital. Because it's everything up to that is, he's a rough around the edges kind of street tough who meets a girl and then he falls in love with her and then he obviously gets cancer and then he's sad about having cancer. All of that could easily, could easily fit into a love story. So
you had
you
no
wouldn't
idea.
even.
Yeah, you had no idea what you were watching. You were just watching this movie, straight up. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
so
love story that all of a sudden turns into a superhero movie.
yeah, so I think it was useful kind of having the joke where you realize right up front that it's a superhero film and then the romantic elements are introduced with them. Okay, this is where it's going.
So
He's going to turn it into a kebab.
Yeah. Obviously, another problem with origin stories, apart from the first half being a bit dull sometimes, is that the villain in origin stories often pops up at the same time as the superhero. Obviously, the most famous example of that is in the first Spider-Man, when the Green Goblin becomes the Green Goblin and Peter Parker gets his powers literally within the span of like 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously in this movie, this superhero origin story wasn't like that. It had I don't think I've ever seen this before. where the superhero is trying to kill or certainly kidnap the guy who made him into a superhero. And that,
Liam Neeson in Batman Begins is kind of close. Not
yeah,
quite, because he trained,
yeah,
but yeah, it's
yeah,
different.
kind of, yeah, it's a bit different. But yeah, this is a really good problem to solve. Like, oh, well, who's going to be Deadpool's villain? Well, the guy who made him Deadpool. It works quite well. You don't need to have like a Green Goblin come in and Deadpool has to kill him. So yeah, that was clever, and again, it's another good thing about this movie.
Yes, and I think this film did a good job kind of negotiating around the fact that it is technically it's a very unique and standalone-ish contribution to a cinematic universe that has been, in operation for like 20 years, like as of now, pretty much. Obviously, because it's an X-Men film, and it doesn't shy away from being an X-Men film, but it kind of does a good job at yeah, I mean, you wouldn't need to have watched a single X-Men film in order to enjoy this film.
Yeah.
There are a few jokes that you wouldn't get, but I think it did quite a good job at being like its own thing, which is something. I mean, my criticism of the Marvel films, for example, is I say, well, it's very difficult to get, and obviously sometimes they pull it off, but I say, it's very difficult to get unique contributions to Marvel films that don't just seem like your standard Marvel formula.
So this obviously was kind of the same standard formula, like a bad villain, like who's one-dimensional that you have to kill. And so again, that like, if it didn't have all the fourth wall breaking and the humor and Ryan Reynolds' performance, if all that wasn't there, and it was just like the actual plot of the movie,
Yeah.
would be quite down the line. It would be quite
Well,
by the numbers.
I think
Yeah.
sorry, I
But
was going to say, I think it's.
I was just going to say, I think that's kind of maybe the point of it. It's like Deadpool, the movie is kind of like at the same time mocking the standard superhero like tropes in these superhero movies. Like I remember at one time, the guy behind the bar, whatever his name
Oh,
is.
he's the meh emoji from the Emoji Movie. T.J. Miller.
TJ Miller. TJ
Well,
Miller.
that's the actor's name.
Yeah. I
Sometimes
know
I
it's the
default
actor's
to the
name.
actor's name. Yeah.
Yeah. So TJ Miller, the guy behind the bar, he says when the guy who works for Ajax is there, the guy with black hair who gives him the business card.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Oh,
said,
further.
yeah, maybe this will further the plot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's very very self-aware, and obviously that's where some of the humor comes from. And with the tone that is set with the fourth wall breaking, it works. They can at the same time have this standard superhero like movie structure in terms of one-dimensional villain and Deadpool's got to kill this bad guy, and they can mock it at the same time,
Yeah.
which works.
Yeah. You just for the record, I was trying to interrupt you for a bit there. You pretty much said exactly what I was going to say, which is that yeah, I think the standardness of this plot is the point, and also kind of a way to not distract. Because obviously, when you're taking a risk as a studio person, you want to make sure that you're taking as few risks as possible. So if you're going to have a risky R-rated film, then you're probably going to keep the plot quite conventional. So
yeah, you don't need to push the boat out. I hope they do something different in Deadpool 2, though. I hope
yeah,
they mix it up a bit.
I saw an advert for that on the TV. Coincidentally, literally today, in fact, I saw an advert for Deadpool, which I mean makes sense because obviously it's coming out quite soon.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, I do wonder about how it will do actually, whether or not it will. Well, maybe we should talk about that, whether it will live up to the hype of this film. Segue into our next point of discussion, the unprecedented success of this film.
Yes. This film was incredibly successful for three reasons. I've highlighted three reasons, Michael.
Okay.
So the first one is the R rating. Well, that's the thing. It's successful for an R-rated movie, but I think the R rating kind of helped it because
Yes.
I think what the R rating gave it was an authenticity. This is going to be a very no bullshit kind of superhero, or it's not a superhero movie, but it's a no bullshit kind of movie. You're going to enjoy it. There's going to be jokes. There's going to be like fourth wall breaking and all that. It's going to be something that maybe you're tired of the standard like PG-13 superhero movies that Marvel has come up with, down the years. And obviously, I think this movie works well for the fact that it was released in a year, 2016, where there was a lot of these like standard superhero movies. In 2016, you had Captain America: Civil War, you had Batman versus Superman, and you probably had an X-Men movie, X-Men Apocalypse.
X-Men Apocalypse, yeah.
Yeah, all these kind of movies released, and obviously in the year prior to that, 2015, it was the same thing, like Avengers: Age of Ultron, another DC superhero movie, probably. I don't know. I can't remember. But basically,
yeah, why not?
around this time, there was a lot of saturation in superhero movies. I think this movie, being released when it did, was very good for it. Because say this movie came out in 2006, there'd be nothing like to contrast it to. It's like, oh, it's an R-rated superhero movie. But the fact that people were, I guess, tired of regular superhero movies, this was a really good time to put into the the cinemas a superhero movie which was so different and such a contrast, like I said, to all the other superhero movies going on at the same time.
Yes, if this is in 2006, it would have been Spider-Man, Batman Returns. No, sorry, not Batman Returns. Spider-Man Returns and Batman Begins, and those would be.
It's like, well, I guess if this was
Whereas
released
now,
in 2006,
Thor,
it'd be a fun movie, but there's nothing like it wouldn't really. There wouldn't really be that big a point to it coming out in 2006. This coming out in 2016 is perfect in terms of the fact that there's so many regular superhero movies going around.
Yeah, because there were R-rated films in the early 2000s that were superhero films, like The Punisher.
Yeah.
And Blade. There we go.
Blade. Yeah, people were just yearning for something different. And
yes.
This is why, again, being an R-rated movie, they could do something different. Also, another reason for this this film's success is the marketing. I think.
Oh yeah.
We need to talk about this because the marketing was really good. I remember seeing like Deadpool adverts on YouTube where he's like in front of a log fire, or the Super Bowl advert. So obviously this movie was released like just a week after the Super Bowl. I remember he had like a American football in his hands, doing some stuff with that. And for this Deadpool 2, I've just seen an advert literally today with David Beckham. David Beckham's in advertising the new Deadpool 2 movie because there was a joke about him in Deadpool 1. Yeah. So there you go. Like Ryan Reynolds, apparently he had a lot of ideas for the marketing, and the marketing budget wasn't that high, but he was like convinced that if he did it this way, it'd be very successful. And
well, yeah, I think Ryan Reynolds actually, because I don't know if you know this, that the Fox was considering shutting down the film, and I think Ryan Reynolds leaked the some test footage, and I think it was action footage from that bridge fight scene.
Mm-hmm.
And people kind of saw that and they were, oh wow, this is crazy. And then obviously Fox was like, all right, well, we'll do it. It was kind of weird for me because I obviously knew about this film, but I kind of knew about it because I was on the internet in the type of areas where you would know about this film. And like I'm pretty sure I knew about this film before it even started getting advertised, just because I follow a bunch of weirdos. And I was kind of like thinking to myself, even while I was quite excited for the film, I was trying to work out, how much does the average person even know or care about this film? And obviously that was answered by the box office. So well done that.
Oh yeah, and I'm just reading a bit on Wikipedia. There was a cross-promotional video with Manchester United for Deadpool. And I remember watching that. It's Deadpool kissing Wayne Rooney's head, I think. It's just such a weird and wonderful video, and that's, I guess, what this marketing was very good at. Being weird and wonderful. So yeah, Ryan Reynolds came up with this. Apparently, Reynolds worked closely with Fox domestic marketing chief Mark Weinstock to use the internet to their advantage and come up with cheaper Deadpool-based ways to market the film. Weinstock noted that it was unusual for an actor in a film to do this. So yeah, I think we can't talk about this movie and review it and reflect on it without saying props to Ryan Reynolds for coming up with this.
He apparently did love the character and had a passion for the character. Yeah. Speaking of loving the character, something that I think is kind of interesting is that nobody knew or cared who Deadpool was. Nobody.
Yeah.
I know a bit about superhero films, and pretty much the first I heard about Deadpool was Deadpool's going to be in a film, and I was like, okay.
The first I heard about it was that there's going to be an R-rated superhero movie coming out called Deadpool.
Yes, and yeah, like I say, when I said that the reason why I knew this film was going to be coming, or I knew this film was going to be coming out before I even saw the marketing, was because I followed a weirdo on YouTube who I don't even follow anymore. But I subscribed to some weird comic book nerd guy on YouTube, and he was a massive fan of Deadpool. I say he was a massive fan, like I say. So the only thing I heard is he went on and was like, "Hey guys, I'm really excited to find out they're making a Deadpool film." And I was like, "Who the hell's that?" So that's kind of why I was in on the bottom floor, because like yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, nobody cared, and
Well,
it's
yeah,
kind of interesting.
this movie made more money than Justice League. The Justice League, I'm pretty sure. Obviously, the Justice League
I
got the
feel like
most,
that could be right, yeah.
yeah, the most famous superhero movies. The superhero movies, superheroes, full stop, like Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. And this movie, Deadpool, R-rated movie that that nobody's ever heard of, like before 2015, comes along and beats them. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Another reason. Oh, go on. Do you want to have one?
I was gonna say, well, like part of the credit for that I think goes to Marvel, because they kind of I think established a precedent that nowadays I think one of the good things Marvel's done is that people don't look for a recognizable superhero name anymore.
That's
They
true.
look for some genuine indication of quality. So it's yeah, you now can no longer just say, oh, it's a Batman film, it's a Spider-Man film, it's a Superman film, and have people go, oh, it's going to be good then.
Yeah.
And likewise, you can have a film no one's ever heard of, or sorry, a character no one's ever heard of, and people are like, oh, I want to watch that because it's
Yeah.
made by people who like they'll be competent.
That's a good point. I imagine obviously Guardians of the Galaxy. That's another good example of that. Came out in 2014, grossed like $850 million, something like that, and obviously nobody had ever heard of them before, but still was a fantastic success. Also, I imagine Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is being released this summer. Like if that's a really really good movie, like that's going to gross $800 million as well,
Yeah.
especially after all the Infinity War stuff. So there you go. Like, who would have ever thought that? Like an Ant-Man movie, an Ant-Man sequel, grossing like $800 million. So you make a good point about how people nowadays don't really care about which superhero is in the movie. Well, they still do kind of care because obviously Batman's v Superman got a lot of money, and the Justice
Yeah.
League, even though it wasn't that great, still did draw in like $700 million. But yeah, people definitely I think care a lot more nowadays about the quality of the movie and not just the superhero in that movie.
Yes. Um, I'm wondering if I had anything else to say about the success of this film.
Well, I did have one more thing.
Good.
So I just one of the reasons why I think this was a success, this movie, was right. I'm a bit scared, Michael. I'm going to pronounce this word wrong.
Okay.
I think it's nihilism.
Yeah, nihilism.
Okay, that is right.
I think you could. I think nihilism is actually a valid variant. Was that your
Yeah,
other
I think
option?
because I think Americans say that word differently. I may be
Oh,
wrong though. I think they say nihilism or something. Maybe
oh,
maybe I'm
probably.
maybe I'm totally wrong on that. But yeah,
Well,
the
nihilism.
nihilism. Yeah, the nihilism in this movie. So this obviously Deadpool was a comic book character from the 90s, very nihilistic era, I think, uh, particularly compared to the noughties and the 80s.
Are you saying that grunge is more nihilistic than the generic pop rock of the early 2000s?
Yeah, that is what I'm saying, Michael.
I can't even think what music in the 80s it was David Bowie. Let's dance do do do
Yeah,
do. And
that kind of
then
stuff. Cool.
uh,
Yeah, well, I think the 90s, particularly towards the end, obviously you had like
Eminem,
Eminem.
he was
Eminem,
angry.
he was angry. There was the what's it called with Edward Norton? Fight Club. That's it. Fight Club, which
Oh
was
yeah.
obviously a very nihilistic movie.
Oh,
Um,
so American Beauty
American
was
Beauty as
pretty
well,
nihilistic.
pretty nihilistic. And so obviously Deadpool came out in the 90s, and I think nihilism is something that is very in fashion today, right now, in 2016 slash 17 slash 18. And that is because of
Slash
the
19 slash
yeah
20.
yeah yeah, and that is because of the internet and the fact that the internet I think has I guess extrapolated nihilistic sort of thinking, uh, and obviously you go on 4chan
Yes.
and obviously Reddit, and there is a lot of nihilism I think you'll find there.
Yes, there's a lot of I feel like it's kind of like even both ends
Yeah.
of the spectrum, because you've got, for example, 4chan, where it's, angry, lonely, sad white men who are depressed about everything because they can't get laid. But then on the flip side, you have, for example, the whole, I feel like this is more common to the Tumblr crowd, like the depressed, indebted millennials who've come out of their 4-year philosophy degree and are working at a coffee shop in Portland.
So because in Portland, that's great. So because of the internet and the economy not being so good for millennials and Generation Z as well, I think they do have a strong sense of nihilism. And obviously, this movie is aimed at millennials and Generation Z, like young people, like people between the ages of like 16 to like 24, I guess. You got that age range. That's who this movie's been marketed to. And obviously, they're quite nihilistic, and this movie's quite nihilistic in the way it breaks the fourth wall, in the way that Deadpool just doesn't die. He just like he can't die, so there's no stakes really when he's getting into a fight. Like nothing matters. Now I did read like some research on like it was Generation Z. That's people born after 2000. And apparently they are very nihilistic and they like to make jokes about, oh, I'm just going to kill myself, stuff like that.
Well, that was the whole. Do you know about the Tide Pod thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tide Pod stuff. Yeah. So I'm just going to eat some Tide Pods.
Delicious.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the fact that this movie had that, I've said this word about 20 times now, but the nihilistic tone really did help it, given that this current generation or its target audience are also nihilistic.
Well, yeah, I mean, in a weird way, actually, a lot of people criticize Zack Snyder for being too miserable. In a weird way, I'm not sure exactly how well classic Superman would do nowadays. Because classic Superman would be, come on, guys, let's fight for truth, justice, and the American way.
You couldn't do classic Superman either, but there's a balance.
You can't do Snyder.
You can't do Zack Snyder, or you can't do Christopher Reeve's Superman. You got to find a balance, and that's what Marvel has done. That's why they're so successful.
Yeah, although sometimes I think Marvel probably doesn't quite get that balance right, and that's when their films don't do so well. Just a hunch. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Marvel movies aren't that serious, and I think that works. They've got a lot of humor in them, and then again, like appeals to people who are young. Memes, exactly. And that is why Deadpool was so successful. The R rating, the fact that it was different to regular superhero movies, the marketing campaign, and its nihilistic tone.
Speaking of memes, apparently Juggernaut might be in Deadpool 2, which I think is very interesting because he is a meme. The classic line from X-Men 3, the best X-Men film, is the Juggernaut says, "You think you can stop me? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch." and that was the first meme I ever heard. I remember people going, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch," and then there was Borat. Those were the two proper pre-meme memes.
Yes, those
memes before memes.
So now I think we should talk about the characters in Deadpool.
Yes.
So we'll start with the title guy himself, Deadpool.
Title guy. I think that's a very sophisticated way of saying the titular character, Luke.
Yeah, the titular
title
character,
guy.
The title guy, Deadpool. So you want to talk about him?
Don't you love the way he gets his name?
Yeah, I thought that was quite creative, actually.
I mean, I assume it's from the comics, but I mean, that could be wrong. I don't know. Sorry, yeah. Very clever.
I enjoyed that, yeah.
And it makes sense, because you do have pools. What it implies, though, is that if he was an actor and he was in the Oscar pool, then his name would have been Oscar Pool. Yeah. And if he was a World Cup team, it would have been called the World Cup Pool.
And if he was an organ of the body, say the liver, it would have been called Liverpool. We can go all day here, Michael.
And if he was in Black Panther, he would have been Blackpool.
Oh yeah, Blackpool.
That's a place.
What a great place. Have you ever been to Blackpool?
No, actually. I just don't see I don't see the point, because it's very there's no point in us going north to get to the sea.
Yeah.
Basically we just go, let's go somewhere where it's cold to go to the sea. Like for us, we go down south to the south coast because we live close enough. Anyway, Deadpool's character. It's really hard to kind of talk about the character of Deadpool because I feel like the character almost is the film.
Oh yeah.
You could say this film feels very, and I'm going to throw out my $1 million word for the day, solipsistic. you know what that means, Luke?
No, go on, explain.
How embarrassing for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
how embarrassing.
Solipsism is actually can mean two things at once, but I'm not going to. Metaphysical solipsism is the belief that you are the only person that exists, and everything else exists from your perspective. So, it would be, for example, I'm basically just a crazy person who's made up someone called Luke, and I talk to him about films, and actually I'm just sat here talking to myself. That would be a solipsistic thing. So it's like when you've made stuff up, and this film kind of has that tone to it because it sort of feels as if, for example, Deadpool, he's aware of a reality that everyone else isn't, which is, of course, he talks to the audience and people go, "Who are you talking to?" And he says, "I wasn't talking to you. I'm talking to them," is a natural line from the film. So there's very much kind of a sense in which the entire film almost feels like you're in his psyche. So you're not an objective observer. You're stuck in a world that's almost, it feels like it's been created by him because it's so kind of attached to, like, the humor happens in the world around, which I guess is almost kind of the nature of a film anyway. For example, he says nobody's getting hurt, and then a guy falls from a sign, and he was like, when I got here, that doesn't happen in Christopher Nolan's film. There's not a scene where Christopher Nolan's Batman. There's not a scene where Batman goes, nobody's getting hurt, and then a guy falls from a sign. Comic timing, it seems to only exist in funny films.
Yeah.
Even when it's just reality itself.
Yeah, but there are some scenes in which Deadpool isn't there. For example, when Ajax captures his girlfriend.
You just said Ajax. Yeah, you're right.
Should I just call it Ajax from now on?
Yeah, let's do that.
Ajax.
Let's take a stand.
Yeah, like if you don't want your name to be pronounced like Ajax, don't spell it like Ajax.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Deadpool, obviously very entertaining, likable, charismatic character. Like you said, it is his movie, obviously, because it's called Deadpool. But yeah, you are like just like super attached to him in a way which no other superhero movie has done. Also, Deadpool is played by Ryan Reynolds, who, like we said, has a real passion for Deadpool as a character. And I think it was clear watching this performance because he really goes for it. I can't imagine any other actor really playing sort of the role of Deadpool. Without Ryan Reynolds, I'm not sure this movie works.
Do you know who I was thinking about? And I couldn't get him out of my head. I wonder if you know this guy by name, Glenn Howerton.
Yes, yeah, the guy from Always Sunny.
Yes. Yeah, I thought you would. Yeah. And I for some reason I just had him in my head. It wouldn't work, but it was similar.
Yeah, it wouldn't work as well, but I can see why you thought of him. But yeah,
yes.
Ryan Reynolds really does make this film enjoyable, I think. So
yeah. Well done, Mr. Reynolds.
Well done. So next
We're
up,
proud of you.
I want to talk about Colossus and Teenage
Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Negasonic Warhead. I thought, obviously, there's a joke in Deadpool which he says, "Oh, I can't. The studio can't afford more than 2 X-Men." I thought that was a bit on the nose, by the way, that joke. It could have just been like, "Oh, there always seems to only be 2 of you in this house." Like, he didn't need to say the studio could only afford 2. It didn't need to be so on the nose. But yeah, basically they could only pick 2 X-Men. They picked Colossus and Teenage Negasonic Warhead. And Colossus was a really good choice because he's very good at being the straight man. I assume he's like this in the comics, like the kind of polite, sensible kind of character. And Teenage Negasonic Warhead also like a guy a girl who doesn't say much. And so, Deadpool can, be his wacky self, and she can just, sit there or stand there and give disapproving looks or comments. So yeah, I thought the choice was really good, those 2.
Well, apparently the joke with Teenage Negasonic Warhead is that she's not actually. I think I'm right in saying that the joke was that she was literally introduced kind of a few months before production, and that was kind of the joke, which is like a joke that like you wouldn't. So I guess it was almost what you would call like a joke amongst the producers and stuff. But apparently, what I heard is that pretty much a comic, an X-Men comic came out. They looked to see if there were any new characters introduced. So the joke was kind of that she wasn't a well-known character. So yeah, I don't know whether or not she is like that, but I do remember hearing that.
I had no idea that she's not a well-known character. I just thought she was another X-Men.
Yeah.
By the way, isn't it a bit sexist that the X-Men are called the X-Men and not the X-People?
X-People? You're right, Luke.
Yeah.
For shame.
For shame, Michael, for shame. So yeah, those two characters were good. Good choice. Then obviously we've got the villain, Ajax, who I think obviously one-dimensional, like we said, not that entertaining. But yeah, he's got a nice voice.
It was an interesting one of the things that I picked up on is that his mutant power is that he doesn't feel pain. And he says that he doesn't feel anything. So the idea is supposed to be that his mutant power is that he's numb. Which is
that a power?
Well, yeah, I don't know. See, it's not really, is it? Because it basically just means, I mean, there's some cases, like I guess it means you can work out a lot more. Because you know when you're trying to do some working out and you just feel that pain and you have to stop because of the pain.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel any of that pain. But then maybe it also means that he's gonna. What if, for example, okay, so here's a good thing. Sometimes, you're working out and you sprain, say you're lifting weights, because obviously he's a big guy, he presumably lifts weights, and if you lift weights, so maybe you're gonna kind of like get a little pain in your arm, and that's an indication that you should kind of take it easy. But if he can't feel pain, he's not going to know that. So basically, what I'm saying is he should actually have these serious joint problems because he can't feel his body telling him. But anyway, what I liked about him
that sounds like a nitpick.
The whole thing is that like he's doesn't feel anything. I almost feel like you could have played that as a joke in a way that they didn't, and I think I'm okay with that. But I also just noticed, I was thinking to myself like I guess the thing is, he seemed like a generic bad guy, and I don't think he needed to be like a generic bad guy because the joke was supposed to be that he didn't feel anything. But there was nothing he actually did that really indicated that was,
Yeah, but he's another
what he was.
He's another straight man like Colossus to
Yes,
Deadpool.
exactly.
So obviously that works well. The interaction between Deadpool and Ajax.
Pretty much everyone's a straight man.
Yeah, pretty much works very well in comedy movies. Actually, not the barman.
I was gonna say, yeah, T.J. Miller is the one exception. He's not quite he's more of a bisexual woman, bisexual agendered person because he's not completely straight, but he's not as bent as, I don't know what the opposite to a straight man is.
Also, his girlfriend isn't that straight of a woman. Yeah. So his
I'm realizing the limitations of the term straight man now.
Yeah. His girlfriend's a bit crazy as well, as is the old black crack addict.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they
exactly.
Maybe they're not all straight then.
Yeah, although she's kind of got a bit of a no-nonsense sense of humor, which makes her a bit straight.
Yes, that's a good point. Good point. I think we should move on. Sorry, go on.
To the woman. That's my guess. Is that how you want to talk about next, Luke?
No, I mean I was done with characters unless you want to talk about.
I thought it might be worth talking about his girlfriend just because she is a part of this film.
She is a part of this film. You're right.
She's someone who exists in this film. No, I wanted to say basically, obviously this film, it kind of has a romantic element. The romantic element is simultaneously present, but also it's kind of a joke. Like it is a joke that this is a romantic film because it's not like supposed to be a romantic film, kind of. I suppose I think her character starts off quite interesting and then gets a bit.
Yeah, she just becomes like a standard girlfriend, and obviously then the damsel in distress at the end of the movie. So yeah, like again, pretty one-dimensional character, but I think that's something that you may expect from this movie.
Also, one more thing about her. The bit where her and Deadpool are kind of like in a whose life is worse competition, I was thinking in my head, like, that's the kind of quirkiness that reminds me of the girls who loved Suicide Squad because they thought Harley Quinn and the Joker were a great couple. And I was just thinking, like, I could just imagine people being like, oh, that's funny because they're both so miserable and depressed, and isn't that cute? I didn't hate it, but I kind of hated the suggestion of it. Okay. I hated the implication.
Hate the implication, wow. Okay.
That your quirky romance is, it's so quirky because we're not like, we're in love, but we're kind of snarky to each other.
Yeah, we don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, these people on the bus were kissing each other, and they were generically attractive. But me and my unattractive boyfriend wear black and have poor personal hygiene and never touch each other.
Because we just don't care.
Yeah.
We're not gonna submit to what society wants us to do. That kind of thinking.
Stupid people, and then they post on Tumblr about it.
Okay, right. Moving on.
To T.J. Miller.
To T.J. Miller. T.J. Miller. What do you
T.J.
think about
Miller.
him?
He is fine. I liked him in the Emoji Movie.
Yeah, he's fine. He's funny. Provides comic
Yeah.
relief.
I was really worried at one point that he was going to die. Like, I was worried that the film was going to make me care by having Ajax kill him, and I'm glad that didn't happen. Like, I honestly thought there was a chance that he would get maybe not killed, but like quite hurt. And I was like, I don't want the film to, because I liked him. I didn't want the film to make me feel that, and the film didn't make me feel that, and I appreciate it. But I'll tell you what he does do. He tells a lot of jokes, doesn't he, Luke?
He does tell a lot of jokes.
In fact, you might say this film has a lot of jokes in it.
Yeah.
And maybe, just possibly, that is what we're going to go into next. I can't remember what order we're going to do this in.
Humour, yeah. So
Yeah, we're doing humour.
I
Good.
thought overall the movie was quite funny, but not laughing funny. Like I don't think I laughed actually at anything.
Really, Luke? It's like, you're like a broken record, Luke.
No, I just like, for example, there's a lot of like R-rated jokes in there, and a lot of jokes that older people would use the word vulgar to describe them.
Yes.
And again, like I guess they're kind of funny if you're like 15, but if you're not 15, then I don't really know why they'd be that funny.
You know what, Luke? We're going to have to review a comedy film you like at one point. I mean, I know you didn't dislike this, but
Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about the humor. For me, I'll say the bad things about the humor first, and then I'll say the good things.
Yeah.
Bad things. Number one, this was quite hit and miss. And the problem is, it's one of those things where when it misses, you feel it miss
Yes.
in a way. So, for example, one of my criticisms of late Simpsons compared to early Simpsons is that in early Simpsons, you don't laugh at every single joke. But when there's a joke and you don't laugh at it, you can kind of just ignore it. Like, I don't know exactly what the science is to it, but you don't have to laugh or even find every joke in, certain shows funny, but you don't feel the miss.
You're saying
But
they're
then,
trying too hard in late Simpsons.
yeah, exactly. So, whereas in late Simpsons, like, there was a joke, did you laugh at it? No? Oh, well, that's embarrassing. And there were a few moments in this, like, for example, and the other thing is, a lot of this was a bit too referential to the extent that if you don't really get the reference,
you won't get the joke. Yeah.
yeah, and you're left completely. For example, the one, and it was in the trailers too, and it was one of the ones in the trailers that actually made me think maybe this film's going to be a bit bad. The less angry Rosie O'Donnell line. I didn't really. I know who Rosie O'Donnell is.
I didn't know who Rosie O'Donnell was until the 2016 US election.
I knew who Rosie O'Donnell was because there's a Simpsons episode where
yeah.
Earth's about to be destroyed, and they go to the sun, and it's like, oh no, Rosie O'Donnell.
Clang,
with the trolleys.
Yes, I remember that, yes. But I know Donald Trump didn't like her either.
So yeah, and especially seeing as I was watching this with my sister, as you know, watching a comedy film with someone else can sometimes make it funnier. But especially if there's like a few people, not enough to because if you're in a room, say a cinema, then there's going to be at least someone there who laughs. There's going to be a couple of people who laugh at every joke. But if you're in a room of like 5 people, then there's a serious risk that there will be a joke, and it's an obvious joke, and it's a joke that says, "Hey, I'm a joke," and
make sure you laugh at me.
Yeah, and no one laughs. And there were quite a few jokes where I was watching it because I was watching it with someone else. I was like, "Ooh, felt that."
There was another one where he says it's like as painful as a sandpaper dildo or something. Oh, you found that funny, did you?
I didn't actually find it.
No, I was just like,
I was laughing at the idea of it. That wasn't as bad because I think I could just about, because actually that did happen and I didn't laugh at it. I don't think it was as quite as awkward, but yeah, I do agree. My other one is this, okay? Because you didn't see this in the cinema, did you?
No, I didn't know.
Didn't think you did, okay? Because you don't want R-rated films to succeed, do you, Luke?
Well, I'll have you know, I watched Logan on a plane flight. So, they recorded that, and they said, "Oh, look, Logan. Somebody watched Logan." So, there you go. I'm doing my bit.
That's such a bad thing to be proud of. Anyway, So basically, obviously, I watched this in the cinema, and like I say, the reason why I said you watch it in the cinema, there's always someone who will laugh at every joke. So it wasn't the jokes that didn't work didn't feel as bad because there were people laughing at them.
No, but sometimes like if there's a bunch of people laughing at a joke,
It's not funny.
and that's not
Even
funny, and it's just like, wait, what am I missing? What's going
yeah,
on here?
that is true.
Are
I
you
mean, there
are you
was
laughing at that? Really?
some of the referential humor probably wasn't an objectively bad joke. It was probably just that, like I don't
Yeah.
know, like maybe there are some people who laugh their head
Oh,
off at.
I got a good example of this.
Okay, hit me.
It was while I was watching Infinity War, and obviously you have the trailers beforehand, and there was a trailer for Deadpool 2, and I'm sitting with my dad, and Deadpool makes a joke about the fact that the DC universe is dark. He said, "Oh, that's as dark as the DC universe," or something like that.
Yeah,
And like, obviously, my dad sitting next to me has no idea, I think, of that joke or the context of that joke. Like, has no idea what that's referencing. But I did hear like a couple of people laugh at the back, like, "I get that joke." So
yeah.
yeah, that's like again one of the examples of a joke which, being a reference, you got to make sure that everybody gets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a bit too much referential humor in this because, like, I mean, some of it, I guess it's like okay if the audience does some legwork,
yeah.
but um,
For the
but yeah, there
casual,
was
yeah, for the casual
yeah,
viewer who maybe doesn't know that much about superhero movies, some of the jokes, like at the beginning when he's making a joke about Hugh Jackman and Wolverine, like I'm just
yeah,
wondering how many people know that Hugh Jackman is Australian.
yeah. See, a few of them kind of got away. Like for example, okay, so I'm pretty sure my sister got none of these jokes.
Yeah,
Number one, a scene where it cuts to an action figure of
yeah,
the 2009, I think it was, Deadpool
yeah,
in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
yes,
Obviously, a famously bad one. It cuts to an action scene. He says, things could be bad, but it could be worse. And
yeah,
obviously, the thing is, you can, obviously, if you get the joke, you go, ha, that's funny. Um,
yeah. And there
but
was also the Green Lantern joke that
yes, and there
make
was the
sure,
don't make this.
yeah,
Yeah, which again, that one was a bit more. See, I think that one, if you don't get the joke, you just assume he's saying a weird thing because he's Deadpool.
hmm
And then the last one is obviously at the end, he's wearing a mask of Hugh Jackman. Um, and I think again, if you don't get the joke, you could probably just say, "Hi, he's wearing another mask underneath it." So I feel like that you could just about get away with saying in those situations, "Okay, that's just Deadpool being weird," because it's not like completely over the top. But yeah, a lot of the stuff it was like very clear, like this is a reference to a thing, and if you don't get the thing, anyway, this was the thing I wanted to say. So I watched this in the cinema, and a lot of the humor in this felt very much cinema oriented, as if like I think this film was aware that it would be an event in a weird way, even though like it couldn't have really predicted this. But it seemed like this was a film where it was hard not to be thinking about being in the cinema watching it. One of the big things was like the repeated references to Valentine's Day, which I think would go completely over your head and be quite confusing to you if you just say, so for example, if someone says, "Oh, Deadpool 2," that's when someone sees, a trailer for Deadpool 2 and they're like, "Oh, that looks good. I guess I should watch Deadpool 1."
mm.
So, in May, they take out this, like we did, they get this film, they put it on, they watch it, and they go, "Why is it talking about Valentine's Day?" And there were like several jokes in there. It was like, for example, the line, "My boyfriend told me this would be a superhero movie."
Yeah,
That makes sense when you're there watching it in the cinema on Valentine's Day or the day after Valentine's Day or whatever. And it's like, look, it's, because we're here and it's Valentine's Day. But,
yeah.
later you're like, oh, wait. And I think that there were a few other jokes like that where I thought that made sense to me when I was in the cinema and that made me laugh when I was actually in the cinema. But being,
Did the girl you were in a relationship with at the time, Michael, think that?
it
Was
was going to
she
be a,
echoing Ryan Reynolds' sentence?
no, actually, I think
Okay.
she was very much in on the humor and it being a Deadpool film and
Well,
not
that's a
a.
shame.
I can't actually remember why we ended up. I think I said it was one of those. I don't usually like going on dates because because I hate leaving the house. But I was like, actually, what? I can kill two birds with one stone here because I want to go see Deadpool, and I guess I should go on a date. I guess I should leave the
I
house.
guess I should.
I
Yeah,
do. I am one of those people who doesn't like going to the cinema for the sake of going to the cinema. So it was quite lucky that that was a film I actually wanted to see. And
yeah,
it all
yeah.
worked
Same.
out quite well. Well done. I wanted to bring this up though, Luke. This is the good humor stuff. I mean, number one, I found, so both me and my sister did laugh quite a bit. I can't remember any of the things she laughed at, but that doesn't matter. I want to bring up two things that I laughed at in the cinema, and I swear not one other person laughed. Like I was like laughing like quite enthusiastically.
Okay, let's
Not
hear
like
it.
loud. Okay, they were literally both in quick succession, and I laughed at both of them, and I didn't hear anyone else laugh. It's the scene when they're having sex during different holidays,
Oh yeah.
and it cuts to and I laughed at both of these the second time I saw them too. The one where Ryan Reynolds is getting fucked up the arse with a strap on,
And
and
you
she
don't know that's
whispers
happening.
Happy International Women's Day.
Yeah.
And then the other one, and this one I found even funnier, was the one where it cuts to them and they're sat in this armchair reading a book, and he's like, "Happy Lent."
Yeah.
I found that hilarious.
I didn't find it hilarious. It was kind of funny. Like it was like maybe a huh kind of moment.
Well,
Definitely at the most. Definitely not laughing out loud.
well, the problem is, Luke, your opinion's garbage. The problem is,
Oh, let's do a joke about Lent. They're not having sex because it's Lent.
yeah, that's you. you, you hate jokes.
I hate jokes that are boring and predictable. You know, actually, people who don't laugh that much have a better sense of humor than people who do laugh a lot. Like it's like taste, Michael.
You're probably right in a way. Like
Yeah.
Jack G and Jimmy Fallon laughs at everything.
Yeah,
And Jimmy
exactly.
Fallon's hilarious.
If you find something that makes me laugh, Michael, you can guarantee it's good. That's all I'm saying.
That's true. To be fair, yeah, me laughing at something, it could be the best comedy of all time, or it could be funny dog fails May 2018 hashtag epic fails.
You want to be able to
hashtag-
appreciate something that is funny. Because if you're just laughing at everything, how can you appreciate everything, you know?
But anyway, Luke, I
Anyway,
did find
yeah.
it funny.
Okay,
And
good.
you do have a habit of never laughing at anything, so
Yeah, I know I do. I'm sorry
we will
about that.
we will find something funny, and then people will be like, "Oh wow, it must be great."
Yeah, exactly.
What I want to do, I want to try and find something you find funny that I don't. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I found Hot
Okay.
Fuzz funny, but
I
I've
found
watched it like 20 times.
everyone was funny.
Yeah, because
That's a terrible. If that was supposed to be an attempt at something that you would find funny that I don't,
No, that wasn't. I was
then that
just
was
saying something that I do find funny.
just saying something you found funny. Full stop.
Yeah, Hot Fuzz.
Good job.
Yeah, Anchorman's funny as well.
Yeah, Anchorman is funny. Although actually, well, okay, we'll talk about it. Maybe we should talk about Anchorman at some point. Anyway, what are we due to talk about now, Luke?
Well, I think we all need to just wrap up, Michael. We all need to
You
conclude.
know what? I was going to talk about action during the.
Yeah, go on action. Talk about action.
It's good. The action. Actually, I guess I should say the action wasn't like fantastic. It wasn't fantastically choreographed. I think it was better than most action. I think it was better than most action because, ironically, even though the final action scene doesn't have guns, I think that one of the reasons this action was quite good is because Deadpool uses guns. Because I think that the problem is, and I've said this before, the problem with action scenes is that most people and actors even can't fight. So because they can't fight, you can't really do that much. However, if all they've got to do is pretend to shoot a gun, then you can do all sorts of that.
You can do all
and it's more exciting.
Yeah.
They can shoot the gun. They can shoot the gun again.
Yeah. The fact that it's an R-rated movie means obviously you can go further with these action scenes, like the bullet going through somebody's head and the guy just splattering on that sign.
That's the best bit.
Yeah, the best bit. So yeah, the action is. You're right. It is better than I think standard superhero movies.
It felt real, and also I guess the fact that he could literally murder people was quite useful.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I mean, I guess the standard for bad superhero action is CGI army. Disposable CGI army, of course, isn't a disposable CGI army at all. So well done.
Yeah, and the superhero not killing the bad henchmen, just punching them and they fall over, and the bad henchmen not using their guns to shoot at the superhero, and then instead engaging in hand-to-hand combat. So obviously they can't kill the superhero, and the superhero can't kill the bad henchman.
Although actually, I feel like he didn't kill his the friend he knew. Do you remember when Deadpool was fighting?
Yeah, but that's because he's his friend.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking about that. Because I was almost wondering if he was going to shoot him, but he doesn't. Well, I assume he doesn't.
Yeah,
If he does, it's off camera.
yeah.
And why'd they
Uh,
do that?
so I think we should wrap up now, Michael.
Yes, we
Uh,
should wrap up.
I am going to go first. So, like I
It's
said,
quite early.
yeah, it is quite early, but I guess the movie was only like an hour and 40 minutes long,
Yeah.
and it's a superhero movie, and obviously we can't talk about superhero movies that much.
Yeah.
Deadpool. Got yeah, I got a thumbs up from me, Michael. This movie, and I think that the character of Deadpool is entertaining. Ryan Reynolds plays it very well. I think the fact that this movie did so well obviously can be attributed to its R rating, the fact that it's different to superhero movies that we normally see, the excellent marketing campaign, and the nihilism, the fact that nothing really matters. Also, the humour, like I said, quite good, not amazing. The action scenes were good as well. All in all, it's a entertaining movie that I think it's good for an hour and 40-minute watch. You're not gonna consider it a waste of your time to watch this movie, and obviously the amount of dollars that it brought in means that Deadpool 2 again it's gonna probably bring in a lot of money as well. Certainly, if the movie is like competent, I can imagine Deadpool 2 being very successful as well. So yeah, very good movie, very different kind of movie, breath of fresh air in many respects. So I am gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
Good. This film was a phenomenon when it came out, a miniature phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's now the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. That's quite a big claim, and it's because important people who did their duty, unlike Luke, went to see this film in the cinema to show their
Wow.
support for something new. It's actually interesting. I guess I should have brought this up earlier. To be honest, I shouldn't be bringing it up in this context. You are allowed to interrupt me, Luke, if you feel like I'm bringing this up and not letting you contribute. One of the things a lot of people were concerned about is that this film would usher in an era of crap where people would just be trying to imitate it. Weirdly enough, that hasn't happened for some weird reason. I mean, I haven't.
I think it's because you can't really replicate the character of Deadpool. Like, you can't like break the fourth wall and like have this character who just doesn't die, just like is like Deadpool. I don't think there's a comic book character out there. I mean, my knowledge of comic book characters isn't that high, but like I can't imagine you could do something similar.
I feel like possibly there is there was an R-rated cut of Suicide Squad that was abandoned, and that Suicide Squad was trying to be like Deadpool. That's just my only guess, though.
Oh, I don't think it. I think it was the opposite. I think Suicide Squad tried to go along and be like Deadpool, but initially it was like quite a dark movie, I think. But obviously, when we get into Suicide Squad, we'll know for sure.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Anyway, but overall, this film it doesn't. It's not as good as you kind of would think it was when you first watched it. I definitely think that it goes down, but I don't think it goes down by that much. Like I said, it's still an enjoyable film as far as superhero films go. It's one of the better ones. I'm not a massive fan of the X-Men franchise on the whole, because I just think it's like there's too much crap. Like, I mean, the X-Men franchise is the franchise that has literally had to retcon their own crap with timeline shenanigans. Like, how nonsense is that?
Very
What a
nonsense,
stupid franchise. But you don't need to know about the X-Men in this. I mean, but having said that, I mean, yeah, like I say, there will be moments if you show this to someone. Like, I bet if I showed my dad this, he would complain about it. Maybe he'd laugh, actually. He surprised me when he liked Disaster Artist. So maybe like it. But I feel like there's definitely a risk when you're watching this that you could have awkward moments. The humor is hit and miss, and that's a bit upsetting. But action and story are fine, so that's that. All in all, I'm going to rank this film above Zootopia, just because. I mean, to be honest, I don't really know why I placed it where I did. I'm happy with where I placed it, but simultaneously I can't really substantiate where I placed it. And I actually placed it, and this is an interesting topical thing. I placed it below the Disaster Artist, Luke. And that is interesting because, of course, the Disaster Artist is another classic comedy where you and I disagreed.
I think you overrate the Disaster Artist far too much.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think you overrate everything that you've put above the Disaster Artist, but below the Grand Budapest Hotel far too much.
Wow, what a statement. So
Anyway, yeah, that's where it sits
okay,
forever.
that's a good place for it. So yeah, that's been our review of Deadpool. We've been selecting and reflecting on it because of Deadpool 2's release this Friday. Like no one's gonna watch this, so they won't notice my slip up. So it's all good. But yeah, next week we shall be doing Rogue One, I believe.
Yes.
Because of Solo, a Star Wars story, which I actually looked at some of the reviews, and apparently it's better than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a disaster, but the reviews that are coming out that I've seen like 4, and like they say it's better. It's like a heist movie, and the actor whoever plays Han Solo is actually better than he seems in the trailer. And obviously that may be just because Disney told them to do so, and or maybe didn't encourage them to write good reviews about it. It's better than you thought, but we'll see.
We have so much crap ahead of us.
We do.
Nah, I don't know. We'll be okay.
We got to review Amy Schumer's new film at some point, by the way, Michael. I feel pretty.
We should review it. We should review our other film too, Trainwreck.
Yeah.
It's actually called Trainwreck.
Yeah, I know. I've seen the footage with LeBron James in it.
Wow.
By the way, I didn't mention all the problems with the Daddy's Home Lakers scene last week.
Yeah, you didn't.
I didn't.
Do you want to tell me about it, Luke?
Yeah, I'll tell you about it.
I mean, this is a shorter episode. Just tell me about it right now.
Okay. So right, let me just get it up. Okay. 1 minute.
That's fine.
Fuck,
Meanwhile,
where did I put it?
I'll come up with a clever acronym to describe the films we're watching. Dr. Toy's sad. Dr. Toy's sad.
Wait, what are you doing?
I'm coming up with an acrostic for the films that we're going to be reviewing in the future.
Okay, right, here we go. So you're getting a bit of an extended Daddy's Home review, which obviously everybody wants. So the basketball scene. It's an awful scene, Michael. Firstly, the Lakers in that year were 21-61, which means they were nowhere near the playoffs. Obviously, it's an NBA playoff game. They were one of the worst teams in the league, so how are they in an NBA playoff game? Also, the New Orleans Pelicans were the 8th seed that year, back in 2015. So they weren't even one of the best teams. So obviously, you have in the playoffs the 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, and 4 versus 5 matchup, which means one of those teams would have to be in the top 4. So even the team that did make the playoffs wasn't in the top 4. So it's just I don't know why it couldn't have just been a regular NBA game, Michael. Why did it have to be an NBA game that's a playoff game? I don't know. But anyway,
You're right.
Basically, Kobe at that point was washed. He wasn't that good. The Pelicans, their crowd was small, and in the playoffs, the crowd would be big, be a lot larger.
That sounds like a lot of extras.
Yeah, I know.
That's a lot of sandwiches.
No, it's just like
the catering desk.
The crowd was half empty, but like it wasn't a case of extras. It was the crowd genuinely just did not show up to this Pelicans game because the Pelicans don't get a lot of people watching their games anyway. So yeah, but in the playoffs they would. The stadium would be full, and they would all be wearing the same coloured shirts, as is tradition in the NBA playoffs. The home team all wears the same colour shirt to create an atmosphere that, unlike regular games where people.
Wait, are you telling me that the playoffs aren't hosted in a neutral stadium like Wembley?
No, they're not.
It's insane.
Also, there's no stickers on the court that say playoffs, which is like the bare minimum. Like you have in the NBA playoffs on the court. Certainly back then in 2015, the playoffs logo would be on the court. So if you're tuning into the TV, you know it's the playoffs, but they don't have that. Basically, I don't know why they made it a playoff game. They could have just made it a regular old game. But yeah, scene awful. So many things wrong with that. And as a basketball fan, it's just disgusting.
Here's my question, Luke. How many times during the film does somebody identify as a playoff game? Because if it's just one person, maybe they misspoke.
Yeah, I mean, it's Will Ferrell who says it's an NBA playoff game.
Yeah, maybe Will Ferrell says it's an NBA playoffs game, and he doesn't even know. Maybe he just thinks playoff because he doesn't know anything about basketball. Maybe he just thinks playoff means play.
Yeah, but like, why would he think it's a playoff game though?
Well, maybe, okay, have you ever thought about this? Maybe he's saying it's an NBA play and a play game because, like it's a game where they play, but then he stubs his toe. So he's like, oh, it's an NBA playoff game.
Wow, you really like Daddy's Home. You know what? I'm disappointed the fact that you like Daddy's Home so much because they're both crap movies. One is extremely crap, and I'm disappointed you thought it was like better than like Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Yeah, actually, let me just look at it on my. I can't even wait. Let me look at it on my rankings. Do you
Absolutely.
want to know? Do you want me to put a number to it, Luke?
Yeah, go on.
14th.
Yeah.
Well, let's be fair, actually, it's worth noting it's more than halfway down.
It should be like just above 50 Shades of Grey.
Surely it should be
I'd
just.
rather watch Lara Croft Tomb Raider than Daddy's Home. And obviously,
Is
when we get into our quarterly review, we can discuss all this.
yes, it's
Uh,
gonna be fun.
it's going to be fun. But yeah,
It's gonna be great.
anyway, we have been, despite that little bit at the end, selecting and reflecting on Deadpool. Thank you for listening. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
And I've been Luke. Once again, thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
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 Yeah, okay, we'll end it now.